Hello! In this video we're going to review character types. What you see here are three sets of character types that are opposites of each other. In this video I will review the definitions of these terms, but more importantly you need to understand how these terms apply to characters in the books that we read or movies that you watch. So as you watch this video and learn the definitions, think about how they might apply to characters you've already encountered in books that you've read or a movie that you've recently seen. Protagonist versus antagonist. These are the two terms that you most likely already know. This is easily said as the good guy and the bad guy. The protagonist would be who you are for. You are pro this person. It's often the main character. And while they're not always a good guy, in some books and movies, the main character is a criminal or is doing bad things. For example, Robin Hood, but they're still the hero or the character that you are rooting for throughout the book or the movie. The antagonist is just going to be the enemy or opposition to that main character, which means that an antagonist doesn't always have to be a character. In some science fiction movies, the antagonist might be a robot or some sort of lab experiment gone wrong. The antagonist could be a tornado, some meteor coming and destroying Earth. So there are all different types of antagonists. A static character versus a dynamic character, again these are opposites, is a character that stays the same, is static, all right? They do not undergo major change throughout the course of the plot. They're basically the same character at the end of the book as they were at the beginning. I've included a picture here of the Peanuts characters because no matter which version of the comic strip you read, these characters always stay the same. The traits that they have, the things that they're known for, they always have. A dynamic character is a character that experiences change. Most likely this change is something internal. They learn to accept something, or they change something about their personality. I've included a picture here of a lot of Disney characters because if you're familiar with any of these characters and their stories or movies, then you would know that most of them underwent some sort of major change from the beginning of the movie to the end. One thing I want to add about dynamic characters is that characters who die during the movie or book at some point, it could be in the beginning, the middle, or the end, a character dying does not make them dynamic. I know that that is a major change, but dying alone is not a change that would make a character dynamic. Here we're going to look at flat characters versus round characters, and I'll explain the balloons in a second. A flat character is one who we might consider two-dimensional, which means that you, the audience, do not learn a lot about the character. You may know a few details, the author might have told you a few, you might have figured some out, but you don't really know that much about your character. A round character is one whom the audience knows a lot about. You know a lot of their personality traits and character traits. The author may have told you a lot, the narrator may have told you a lot, or you have figured them out through the characters' actions, speech, appearance, private thoughts, or how other characters feel about them. Now the balloons I always use as a reference to have a visual with round and flat. A flat balloon, as you can see at the top, has no air in it. It's flat. So if you think about a flat character, think of a flat balloon. There's nothing in it. But to make them round, all right, like the balloons at the bottom, you would have to blow air into them. And I usually say as a general rule of thumb, 5 big puffs of air is enough to make a flat balloon round. So if you can name 5 substantial traits or details about a character, then most likely you are dealing with a character who is round. Okay, so let's do a little bit of practice. Depending on how well you remembered those definitions, this might be easy or it might be tough. Hopefully you know these 4 characters. Katniss from The Hunger Games. What do you think? Is she a protagonist or antagonist? Hopefully you're thinking protagonist. Do you think she's round or flat? Hopefully you're thinking round. And would you say dynamic or static? She is definitely a dynamic character. Okay, next we're going to look at the Wicked Witch of the West. So I'll give you a second. Think about whether or not you think she is a protagonist or antagonist. Is she round or flat? And is she static or dynamic? The Wicked Witch is definitely an antagonist, no question about that. She's also flat. We know a few things about her, like she's from the West and her sister was from the East, but we don't know that much about her background, and she is definitely static. She did not make any major personality changes throughout the course of the book. Okay, now look at Timon and Pumbaa. I know they're 2 different characters, but they both are categorized the same. So think again, we want to know, are they protagonists or antagonists? Are they round or flat? And are they static or dynamic? Okay, so I sort of tricked you here. Timon and Pumbaa are neither a protagonist nor an antagonist, and many characters are neither of those. Often the book or the movie would only have one single protagonist and sometimes only one antagonist. All of those other characters are just, they're neither one of those. So they are neither protagonist or antagonist. They are both definitely round. We find out a lot about them when they're first introduced in the movie, but they're also both static. They do not undergo major changes throughout the movie. All right, lastly, hopefully you're familiar with Harley Quinn from the Suicide Squad. If not, this is going to be a tough one to answer. So ask yourself, do you think she is a protagonist or antagonist, round or flat, and static or dynamic? So Harley Quinn is an example of that protagonist who is the bad guy. Even though she is a villain, she's acting as the protagonist in this movie. She is one of the characters that you are rooting for, so she's a protagonist. She's also a round character. We know a lot about her. We find out a lot about her throughout the course of the movie. And she's also dynamic. Of course, she's still a villain at the end, but there are many changes she goes through throughout the movie, which makes her dynamic. Hopefully you made out pretty well. You got most of these correct. We're going to look at how these terms relate to our current text. So make sure that you come tomorrow with a good understanding or any questions you want to ask regarding any of these terms or these characters.